Welcome to this episode, a special episode, the 100th episode of the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
I'm Gayatri.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, we've been bringing you stories of people and what they learned the hard way, what worked, what didn't work, etc. And this is our 100th episode.
Yeah, so today we have four of our past guests who are back with us here to share some more stories on this special episode. And we're eagerly waiting to listen to what those stories may be. And incidentally, this will be the official 100th episode.
We had some very short episodes. We also had, breaks. In this time, I think we had almost 2 years. We have been bringing you stories of how software people stories are evolved. And I wanted to bring all the guests together and get us started.
And just wanted to share with everyone that today is our first experiment in doing a live recording with an audience, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, we've been pretty anxious at trying to see how to prepare what we can do. And today also happens to be the International Podcast Day.
Yeah. Oh,
and so we need the laughter tracks as well as applause and all that from time to time to prove that this is a live recording. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the story goes back about 2 years when, or not even 2 years, maybe three and a half years, when I thought of doing something to capture some of the experiences that are normally not recorded or available. So the initial name for this podcast was called Software Lifecycle Stories. So we thought we will share tips about how to do things, how not to do things, and so on. And it was more a monologue. And after recording a couple of episodes, I was getting bored myself to listen to my own voice. And then I thought I should probably get stories from others. And when I started talking to people, I said, no, why not have them also talk about it in their own voices? Gopal and I go back almost 40 years now, and we do a lot of experiments. So I told Gopal that, can we just have a chat? Gopal, as a sucker, said, yeah, why don't we have a chat? So we started talking. And then when I started editing, it said, seems to be a fine recording, Gopal, I'm going to publish it. He said, no, I didn't prepare. I said, no, it doesn't matter, Gopal, we'll just play it and see what happens. And then slowly, after a couple more episodes, the people side of the stories became more interesting. And the feedback we got also was that, we really want to know that we can relate to a lot of things that some of the guests are talking about. So that it was a pivot for us to say that it's a software people stories. And it has been every week we've been able to publish, thanks to all of you sharing your stories. So I'd like to start with asking Gopal about being the first guest and about being surprised or how you felt when he said, then we'll publish this.
You said already, I was a sucker. I mean, he knowing me for more than 40 years now, Shiv knows I have a weakness for any experimentation. Anything that say, let's experiment, then I'll jump into it without knowing what I'm getting into. Same thing happened with podcast also. So he said, we'll just see how the technical quality of the recording is going to be and whether it is feasible and all that. So we anyway talk a lot. So we just kept talking, and I was like, I had no clue that he was actually manipulating me to contribute to this podcast. And at the end, he just said, I edited it and I'm going to publish it as the first podcast. So I was surprised and shocked as to, I don't even know what I told, because I can't say things which I don't really want to say in publishing things. But anyway, he cleaned it up, I guess. And when I heard it, I was surprised. I didn't think that I knew whatever I told that day on the podcast. So it was a pleasant surprise. And it was completely unknown to me. Then I realized that it's a media that probably doesn't need any preparation. Anyway, even if you had told me right from my school days, I never knew how to prepare for an exam. I will say I have to prepare. I just go and take the exam. So it was like, for me, that was that. So when we had another episode, again, I didn't really do anything. I just let him ask questions and told him whatever came to my mind. So it was good. I really didn't feel it was any different from generally talking to Shiv. So it's pretty good, very enjoyable. And it even surprises you to listen to yourself later as to, did I really say those things? So that's how I felt when I heard it.
Thanks, Gopal.
Yeah, so thanks, Shiv. I probably share a little bit about what inspired me to be part of this. is, ever since I've heard the first FM radio station in Bangalore in 2001, I always harbored like this very secret ambition to be an RJ. So and the medium of voice is something that I resonate with a lot, perhaps a lot more than video. I mean, I realized I can listen to audio much longer, and it sort of sits with me than if I'm watching a video. And so I discovered podcasts shortly before I joined PM Power, and then later came to know that Shiv had actually undergone a training session with somebody about how to do podcasting. I said, okay, let me dive in with all that I have. And after 2 takes of our conversation between Shiv and me, where I had terrific brain freeze at both times, I am happy to say that this is something that I've begun to enjoy, simply because it's a fantastic medium to listen to and share people's stories, and makes for a wonderful walking companion, I say. And right now, 3 is definitely company with Gayatri there with us. And I'm looking forward to uncovering many, many more stories. So with that, while I'm on the constant lookout for a guest, so please don't think I'm a stalker in case I'm sending repeated invites to people. And at this point in time, I was just beginning to feel good about, being a co-host and all. And then I'd met Neeraja, and I said, hey, how would you like to be, part of a podcast? And she said, what is a podcast? So I said, great, come on over and see. And like Gopal, you said, you're a sucker for experiments. I think Neeraja is also one for all kinds of new experiences. And that's how she became a guest, or rather, I'd like to think that's how she became a guest on the Software People Stories. So over to you, Neeraja. How has been your experience so far after being a podcast guest? And would you like to share something about that experience and what happened after that?
So, yeah, of course, Chitra and I, met very strangely. It's not that we are long, standing friends like Gopal and Shiv, but, I'm known as a super networker. So, all people who I have become so close with in the last few years is because of the fact that I try and get in touch with people and see how we can, nurture this relationship and contribute. So I heard from another friend of Chitra's, Shreya, who said that Chitra started to experiment with podcasts. And I said, okay. I mean, it still didn't urge me to go and find out what a podcast is or listen to any of them. And then she said, yeah, Neeraja, you'll be my guest at this podcast. So I said, okay, let's see. But, what usually happens is whenever you are on any kind of an interview show, audio, video, or even if it's just a written blog, there will be questions sent to you. So you can, prep in some ways and have those answers ready. Either you read it out or you have it in your head. So you collected all your thoughts. And Chitra, she didn't want to do that. She said, I'm not giving you questions. It will be a nice conversation. So let's go ahead with it. I said, okay, let's go ahead with it. Let's see what happens. And I listened to this podcast again 2 days back, Chitra, and I thought, wow, I've done a great job. I don't think any of the other prepped up, no, because I've been on many shows after that. The prepped up ones have been as good as this one. So, it's kudos, Chitra, in terms of taking us through, making us so comfortable with the questions and bringing out all those stories and emotions that at least I, put through.
Thank you so much.
Given that it was my first podcast, of course, I wanted to tell the whole world, see, I'm on a podcast, which I did. I still remember the day it went live. I was traveling in a train, and that's when I saw your WhatsApp message. And I was struggling to get to the internet, on the train to say, oh, I want to listen to this. And then I have to share it to the whole world. So that was the first experience. I think the podcast did well, and I have used it in many ways to introduce myself or let people know, or any kind of other kinds of promotion that I want to do for me when I was getting the Her Rising Award or nominated for the Her Rising Award last year and all of that. A lot of people have come back and said, we didn't know this part of you. The ones who know me recently have said they didn't know that part of me, which comes out in the beginning of the podcast. Those of you who want to know will go and listen to the podcast now. So it has been a fantastic episode, and And after that, I won't say that have become an avid listener to podcasts, but I do catch it when people do share it with me. I will not ignore it. If somebody says, hey, this is a good podcast, I do listen.
Thanks, Neeraja. That was really nice. Over to you, Gayatri. We've got to unravel your story now.
Thank you, Chitra. In fact, I'll start with my own first time when I was a guest. Right, Shivji was in Chennai at that time, and Shiv called that day morning, said, "Hey, are you available?" I said, next day, why don't we meet up? I didn't realize that day is going to be the recording. He brought a very small kit of recording and everything, and he said, what are the questions? He said, don't worry, just be yourself. That's how my experiment started. And another meetup with PM Power Consulting, I said it was such a nice experience to be on the podcast, and it's also helped me to connect with a lot of people in terms of my own friends, and said, why don't you be part of be a host? We'll be a host and you can be a guest. So that helped me, and then said, what does it take to be one of the hosts? I'm the youngest of the lot, right? And I've been a host only about 8-9 months now, and I'm still learning. I wouldn't say that I have got the best out of it, but I've been listening, and the podcast has also helped me increase my number of kilometers I walk by at least a kilometer, by at least 10-15 minutes, because I want to finish that episode before I finish the talk. And what is also interesting is that while Gopal and Shiv talk about decades, I know Sukumar now for a decade. We both bought an apartment in the same community, and while we share a lot of topics, be it philosophy, be it, he's also avid book reader, management, leadership. One of the conversations, I called Sukumar out of the blue and said, hey Sukumar, can you appear in our podcast? He said, sure, why not? And I also want to say that Sukumar is the reason why I'm very, very consistent in many of my habits. So he introduced me to TinyMagiq long ago, before it was called TinyMagiq. And what has been your experience, Sukumar, during the podcasting experience as well as after that?
I think like what Gopal and Neeraja pointed out, I like that it's an unscripted thing. I might not have said that before I did it, because I prepare a lot and I don't think that extempore works that well. But I think the reason for that is the kind of questions Shiv asks. I think that is the secret, the kind of questions he asked. He was able to get at core aspects of my experience very quickly. I don't know how he does that. That is some special ability I think he has. So I was able to bring out, even though I was not prepared, there was no script, but I think it came out very well. Now you all talked about COVID. Only after the COVID started, I even started listening to podcasts. I am in the gym a lot, like G and I sometimes are in the gym together. I like to not even have the music on. I'm exercising and I will do only that. But now during the COVID crisis, the gym is closed, so I do my walking and listen, and I think this is quite good. So I am now starting to listen to podcasts and I'm seeing the value in it. I am more of a video person and reading person. Audio was not my thing. I didn't think that I could listen and do something at the same time and actually pick up some kind of, you can say, mental block I had. But I think that I am able to understand what is going on in the conversation, and the kind of conversations you all put together makes it very easy to listen. So I think I have been pleasantly surprised myself that I can listen and do something else also, because I am this mono thing. Nothing should be on, no sound. Focus. Like that.
Same here. I never used to be part of the listening part of it. I used to always say, okay, I do one thing, I'll only do one thing. One is amplifying effect on the other.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Sukumar and Gayatri. And that's the thing I've noticed, the surprise element in this whole thing. And if I can go back to my first recording with Shiv, and like you said, Sukumar and Gayatri, the kind of questions that come across I unfreeze my brain with it, saying that, hey, relax, I think I can talk about this. And that's how it came through. And then the urgency to take that extra round of walk or just hang on in the kitchen that much longer simply because you want to finish an episode, finish listening to an episode, because once you finish, then you have to get back to the hurly-burly of everything else around you. So with that, how Jacintha came to be a podcast guest. In fact, we were wondering what to do for Women's Day this year as a Women's Day special. And we said, why not talk to people who worked with people in the tech industry and get their perspective? And Jacintha was one person that came to mind. And boy, what an explosive episode that was. These were perspectives that we never realized existed simply because we're, let's say, on the other side. But it was fantastic listening to what someone in HR had experienced working for so many years with techies and people in the software industry. I believe that was Jacintha's first podcast episode, but let's hear from her. Over to you, Jacintha.
So, Chitra, thank you. Of course, while Neeraja is the most avid networker that I know, Chitra is extremely persuasive. Okay, so I was saying, what do I have to do in stories of software people? But when I look back, it looks like the story of my life for the first 15 years of my career. Okay, I was the HR person for software people, and I grew as a human being, and I thought that was a story worth sharing more than anything else. And so when Chitra said, here's it is, and here's a podcast, and this is how I intend to do it, the only thing I could think of was I need to be in a room that is soundproof. I assumed that was the only qualification. And so I ensured I was in some room which I felt could sort of negate some of the noises, which is not a privilege that I have today, because I'm having every kind of lovely challenge that you typically have. But I loved the experience. My own experience in podcast, I'm an avid listener. There's not a day that I'm not listening to a podcast. Of course, my weekends are dedicated to at least 5 TED Talks and a couple of other things that I think I need to listen to for sure. But apart from that, my experiment with anything to do with voice actually started when I was working with On Mobile, because there we had a recording studio where we would record voice prompts for all your mobile phones. So when you hear ek dawaye or press 1 for, it was happening in our studio. So it was a fantastic experience to go and listen to the studio team of mine, which was full of very, very vibrant set of talent, So in On Mobile, I had this lovely experience of looking at not just product teams and product engineers, etc. We had this team sitting there, which was creating scripts for voice prompts, which was putting out content over there. And you had voice modulators, you had script writers, you had sound engineers, all in the space of what I assumed to be a software company when I initially joined. But it was such a beautiful experience to learn. Now that gave me the confidence. At some point in time, I decided that people like to listen to me. That's an assumption, by the way. And I said, why not share something every morning? So I picked up my little Android phone, started recording messages. If that is in some ways connected with the world of reaching out with your voice, I would record a spiritual message and I would send it to my family members, because I felt it's good to listen to something that's positive and uplifting before you start your day. I felt if there was one contribution I could make to my family members, maybe that was it, right? Not sending them random good morning messages, etc. So I realized in the space of 12 months, it had begun to reach about 5,000 people. What I started with sending to maybe 4 of my cousins, right? They would always say, hey, you know what, why don't you just do this? It's nice to listen to it. I started getting messages from people from across India, Africa, Canada, and Australia. And then I'm sitting and saying, and none of them knew me. By the way, I would only send it to the first set of some 30, 40 people whom I had created as a little group on my WhatsApp. And then it would go out to people. And then one of my priest friends, very interestingly, calls me up and says, looks like you're taking over my job. I said, what? And he lives in Hyderabad. I said, why would I even do that? And then he says, listen, every day, I'm getting this voice message and I knew it's coming from you, even though there's absolutely no introduction to who's speaking, etc. He says, here is somebody sending this to me from Ahmedabad, saying, listen to this lady. And he said, I knew it's your voice. And that day I realized the power of sharing. What this media can do for you, if you truly have something that is interesting, is uplifting, I think we should use every mechanism possible. Of course, coming back to software people, I realized I literally grew as a professional and as a person working in the IT industry and living with, learning from, and breathing the same air as many, many software people. And I will still count on them as some of my bestest friends and greatest mentors sitting there. So when Chitra said software people stories, I pick up Neeraja's line, which is every interaction is an opportunity. And there I said, let me seize the opportunity, and came on, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I completely enjoyed it. So that would be, my take on podcasts, Chitra, and reaching out to the world with your voice and your opinion.
Thank you, Jacintha. Very kind of you, and beautiful narrative around your experience.
Oh, amazing, Jacintha. I didn't realize that such a positive impact your video has already created. So, as we are in COVID days, most of us are all using our computers to connect, to work, to have fun. And many times we are seeing people having hesitation to turn on video. It also creates a sort of a fatigue sometimes, or constantly looking at your laptop and working for it, right? And what do you think about the media of audio? This is a question I'll start with Gopal. What do you think as a media? Do you think this sort of a passive way of interaction where there are two people talking and one person listening, rather than as a video, when you see a video, YouTube video, you are expected to likes, give immediate feedback, comments, and everything. But here you are, this almost, as you listen, this is a lot more closer to the brain, and it hits you. It's somewhere it connects the dots. What do you think, Gopal?
My personal favorite is to listen. Actually, I always was told that if I listen to something, I remember them better, I understand it better than even reading or seeing a video or whatever it is. So it is a personal choice. But I also think that, I used to know someone who said that what is the difference between reading a story and seeing a movie on the screen? People said that when you read, your imagination is going to limit how that scene is being portrayed. Whereas if you're seeing a movie or anything on screen, it is limited by the technology and creativity of the person who is creating it. So you have more scope for imagination when you are actually reading. Similarly, I think video ties you down. I don't think I can watch a video beyond certain duration, whereas listening is a lot more easy on you, and like you have no pressure. You can lie down. You can do whatever you are doing and still be actively involved in what is being discussed, which is not possible with the other media. So I think it's a very convenient media. I don't think they are competing. Each one, I think, has a space. And I have a lot of fondness to audio as a media, and podcasts are favorite. And more than monologues, I think conversations make them easier to keep your focus, and also breaks the monotony of a lecture. When you are listening to a topic, when two people are discussing and you are there, it actually makes it, more interesting. In fact, something very funny I noticed. There is a guy called Stupid Reactions. There is two Americans who call themselves as Stupid Reactions. And they see a lot of Indian videos, movies, and mostly movies and music and things like that. And when the music and movies are going on, they will give their opinion. I wondered why anyone would watch somebody watching something. And I felt that when I'm doing that, the enthusiasm they share, the criticism that they make, and the fun comments they make and all that make it even more interesting than watching the same video just by yourself. So there are so many ways in which some of these things change your perspective. So first podcast was about where did this quinoa originate or something in South America. And I listened to that podcast some years ago, and I said, wow, this is a good way to understand something new. So I think that audio is a very powerful thing, and it is going to be there. And for people like me, I think it is even more powerful than a video or a book. Though book has its own advantages, audio is, I think, close to it, in my opinion.
Nice one, Gopal.
This is for Neeraja. Yeah, you said you are a super networker. I am probably drawing an inference from there, saying that networking involves interaction with people, being there with them, getting together and all that. Now, also partly because of COVID, when the medium of connect is only audio, how has it either helped you continue networking, or has it put in some blocks to your normal amount of networking?
So let me take a step back in terms of not self-proclaimed also, because everyone says, and now I understand that yes, I am, I have a large network. It has not been built because I wanted to build a network, right? It happened because I really wanted to connect with people, to see how I could contribute in some way, help them out, be of some value. And eventually it's kind of grown to this large network that I have. The other thing, the first realization that I had, or the first worry that I had the minute we had the COVID lockdown, was I am a people's person. And I've always been with people. In my IT job, when I was heading the not-for-profit foundation, and then when I went to work in a college, it was a big struggle because I had this huge cabin that the college built for me, and I had to go and sit there all by myself because the role didn't involve interacting with anyone in the college. It was more the industry academia connect, so I had to really just talk to people outside. Sitting the whole day in that room, having lunch all by myself, I really got depressed. So I ensured that I would go to at least one event every week where either I'm speaking or I'm listening to someone else, so you have people around you and it kind of energizes you. And that was my first worry the minute the lockdown happened and I was at home, that I am going to go into depression. But I have to say that I have not. I think I've kind of emerged much better because the online world for me has managed to really connect far and wide. It has not, hindered in any way at all. Zoom has been great, or any other platform has been fantastic. Because I also have been part of many other networks, there have been a lot of online meetups we've done, events we've done. And for whatever reason, in the last 6 months, I think I have been on one event, show, talk, video recording, at least one every week. This week has been 4. So, I think I have had more than what I have had in my pre-COVID life, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly, is what I would say, and continues to be in terms of what I can give to the person. How can I provide some value? Looks like I am providing value. That's why more and more people are reaching out for whatever and growing. So it has not hindered me in any way. I'm enjoying it.
That's nice. Yeah. So trying to have an add-on question, which is more of using audio as a medium for storytelling. You've been on corporates, you've been NGOs, interacting with a lot of people. When you are limited to audio, how should we rethink the way we narrate stories?
I think for me, like people say that videos, more than 5 minutes don't, or 2 minutes don't really, hold attention. That's what, the people who research, and they say we should limit it to that. While audios can go for longer, or, a textual, interview maybe can, be a long. I have not had this problem of small or long. As long as it catches on, the story is extremely important. So like Jess was saying, software people stories, software lifecycle stories, it's a story. If you are able to narrate it as a story, I think you can go on. The audio can be there without a video. It can be as long as you want to. It doesn't have to be short bites at all. I believe people will want to listen and will listen to it, completely. For example, I was on it was a Kocharya event where it was a 1.5 hours conference, and they recorded it. They didn't edit it at all, and they put it up on YouTube, and I've shared it with people. People have told me that we are not having 1.5 hours in one go, but we are listening to it. We want to continue to listen to it. So they will do it. I think the story is very compelling. People who ask questions, and you people are brilliant because you are able to bring it out from us in the form of a story. I think we should give credit to you.
Yeah, thanks, Neeraja.
Can I interrupt in between here?
Storyteller, Paramu, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this media, etc. When I don't know if you know the story of how the King James authorized version of the Bible was created. I think King James authorized some I don't know 100 or 200, some number of people to actually create a Bible, a Protestant Bible, right? And the creators of the Bible not only looked at how the thing would read, but also how it would sound, right? So they would actually say they'll read it and see how people react to what is being read. So the Bible it's not enough for people to read. It's also for people to hear and listen to it. So that's how this audio thing sometimes is very important. Only through audio can you actually capture people.
Thanks, Paramu.
Thanks, Paramu. In fact, yesterday I was, a TED Talk came on one of my, where a person explained in sign language on a TED Talk how merely expressing yourself in the English language is perhaps something very linear, But if you are able to put in very pitch, voice, tone, expression, like Neeraja said, right? The story comes alive. So it's like striking a chord versus striking one note. And with that, I want to ask Sukumar. You said that you like to do one thing at a time, and you have sort of aligned more with watching videos and reading. So in today's scenario, when a lot of people are joining meetings over video, many of them are also passive. Other than maybe the one person who's leading the meeting and one person who's talking, it's very rare that everybody is engaged. So what are your thoughts on using audio as a medium of storytelling, and how can we get more people to put their stories out on audio?
So that's a great question, Chitra. See, what I find, there are a couple of things I will say. Text is unnatural if you think about it. Humans invented text, whereas nature gave us audio and video, right? So, in fact, me and my co-founder having a discussion. I think audio is even more natural because video is still put together. It is not straight away. Audio is the only thing that's kind of unfiltered, and whatever nature has given us, we are using it. Video is still manufactured, right? You can't just do it, you have to record it. There is some processing involved. So audio, I think, is most natural. The second thing I find, which I think that is the biggest, most important thing I've learned recently, is we are on these calls and I am teacher, right? We teach digital transformation and things like that in our business. Now, what I find very interesting is that I tell my daughter, she's 12-year-old, hey, listen to this, learn about this. She goes to YouTube, watches that video, and I ask her one question, two questions, she has understood it. And I am thinking, so this is the whole flipped classroom thing going on. Now, I started doing that. I send people, I have many of my sessions recorded, I send the video to them and then say, hey, apply this technique and let's talk about what you did, right? This idea that we will just do the classroom on Zoom, and I think is not a good idea. I was teaching in person. Now I will do that on Zoom with 50 people looking. I think we are missing the point of what this digital world is about. If that's all we did, I think we are completely missing or not utilizing the power of this medium. So I record a 10-minute session. I send it to you, whether video or audio. I think audio is even better because I could be walking, doing something, and I am learning. I am in a bus going somewhere. It's much easier to listen to audio in that context. I am in a car, I am driving somewhere, I can listen to the podcast. At the end of it, I have learned something, and then let's just discuss on the Zoom call what was that about. Rather than me sitting here and giving you a lecture, which I would have otherwise given. I think this shift to flipped classrooms has to be done. And I work with some teachers in grade schools, and I'm requesting them to experiment with this. See, please don't do the same thing that you did in your classroom on Zoom. That, I think, is not the way to go. You would record that lecture, give it to the students, and they are actually going to Khan Academy and listening to it. So you're like, why are you even doing this lesson? There's only one teacher who needs to do a lesson on Doppler effect, right? You do that well and you're done, right? All the teachers don't need to do. But where the teachers could help is, hey, how does Doppler effect work in real life? Then we have a discussion on that. So you asked a great question, and this is what I thought. And I wanted to react quickly to what Gopal said. That stupid reactions is brilliant. Please follow them. Even though they have this stupid reactions thing, I think they are pretty good. And I am thinking the World Cup 1983 victory, as a child, I'm listening to it in my small pocket radio. And I can still relive that experience, even though I'm just listening to the commentary of someone who was watching in UK and I'm sitting here. This experience, I think podcasts are able to bring that experience, right? The radio experience. This is like the 21st century radio. So I think audio is, you are all on to something in terms of leveraging audio for communicating your story.
Thanks, Sukumar. Yeah, I hope all school teachers are listening, because I have 2 kids at home and I've seen what they're going through. But I'm sure this is something that, is really worth sharing with so many others.
I like the whole concept of there's a difference between digitization and digitalization, right? Digitization is you're just converting whatever you are doing to just the digital media. Digitalization is actually exploiting what are the possibilities. And wonderful example, Sukumar. And I'm going to probably, I know COVID, we have been talking about it. I'm going to ask this question to Jacintha. Jacintha, during this COVID times, how has your life changed in terms of has it improved? Has there been challenges? See, as a HR professional, you derive energy and effectiveness from interacting people and so leveraging their own conversations, right? How has that affected you? You're also an investor in a couple of companies, so I want to hear from you. How has
Actually, I think for the first 15 years, I definitely was a HR person. It's just amazing that I continue to seem to be the HR person in terms of go-to for advice for many of the people with whom I worked in the first 15 years. But having said that, the last 11 years, I've tried to build a company of my own. So it's been more an entrepreneurial journey. And in the last 2 years, of course, I decided to move and do the work that I wanted to do when I turned 60, 70. Then I realized I never know if there's going to be a 60, 70, might as well start doing it now. So I started working in the area of social impact, and Neeraja and Chitra and I work together in working in HopeWorks Foundation, which is a trust that we have set up. We work with girls who come from what we call financially being under-resourced and therefore challenged. We don't use the word poor. Okay. The second thing is that, so how does all of these things, which required physical interaction with the children, change dramatically because of COVID? Well, I'd like to give 3 perspectives to this whole thing. I continue to consult. So work actually transitioned pretty seamlessly, right? From meeting people, you moved on to meeting on Zoom. You're pretty much meeting the same people. Now, earlier people hesitated to speak because they felt intimidated in a room. Now they felt everybody was walking into their living room. So, the idea of personal space was definitely invaded. So we said, how do you get people to get comfortable with the whole idea, right? So we did funny stuff. We had in Enquerro, the company that I consult with, we did one Pagdi Friday. We made everyone wear a Pagdi and appear on it. The idea was break the barriers. That's it. It's nothing else. Get comfortable. Our houses are going to be a little messy. They're not showrooms. This is places where we live. It's not meant for display. So it's fine to live with all of this. The second thing with our children, we realized the challenge was how do we reach out to them? And we really struggled to figure out because many of our children don't even have a smartphone, so to say, So by the way, many of them are deprived of education, access to education. And that really set us saying, how do we still reach out to children? Because we don't know when the end to this pandemic and going back to schools, the laughter, the joy of being there, fighting with your friends, and all of those things is really going to come back into your life. So the only thing we did was go back and reach out to a company called Gram Vani. As the words say, Gram is village and Vani is really waves of radio that we could use. And now we're going to reach out to the same set of 550 girls using radio as a channel through which we do push content. And what do we push as content? We push stories. We're saying, how am I coping? What have I learned in life? Then ask them to share their stories. Now that is going to be a pilot attempt with the kids starting next month. And we are hoping that we can bring the children to engage and know that we still exist. COVID didn't make us disappear. The third element was COVID. In fact, I've met more people in person. I've worked with more people in person during COVID. Because in March 3rd week, when the government announced the lockdown, the first thing that moved me was the plight of the migrant workers. And so I cooked first day 50 meals and walked out of my house into a migrant cluster community that exists in my neighborhood and shared whatever we had cooked. And then the next day it became 75, third day it was 100. And then I knew there were thousands and thousands and thousands needing food. And I said, this is not a scalable model. So what do? I pick up the phone. I call people up. I said, how do you do this? What can we do together? How do we collaborate? We brought together people whom we never knew existed in our neighborhood or on the face of this earth. And what happens? Magic happens when you actually talk across and ask people. And in a space of 2 months, we were able to serve 13,50,000 meal support. We were able to give about 1,50,000 actual meals. And I know that kind of impact was something that we didn't envisage when we started out in March. It was the culmination of 3 things. One, a humanitarian response to a humanitarian crisis. And I think every human being rose up and shone in very bright colors during this time for me. The second thing was the fact that you use your network. You know, you call 10 people, those 10 people call another 10 people, and then you had this network. I had 60 volunteers walking into a Kalyan Mandap when everybody else was refusing to come out of their houses, to come and pack groceries in 3 shifts in a day over a period of 10 days so that we could supply it to the 7,000 identified families. And I can tell you, while we said we are trying to keep the environment as sanitized as possible, etc., it was still something that they had responded to and came together. So COVID actually taught me that the world shrinks or expands in size depending upon your ability to reach out to people, your willingness to work against what looks like a very formidable but unseen kind of, I wouldn't use the word enemy, but fear that was looking at us. And sometimes I think we over rely on common sense. And I think the fact that we could all work together, come together, and the volunteers just brought more volunteers, and more volunteers brought more volunteers. I had volunteers from the age of 6 to the age of 75, and they would all come and do their bits. It was fascinating for me. So COVID to me has actually been the biggest learning experience in how human beings can come together during adverse circumstances and still create what I think is large scale impact. You know, it is not small. You know, when I reel off these numbers, sometimes I have to pinch myself to say, did we even do this? You know, did we even do this? Like 15,000 masks as on date, from government hospitals to schools to migrant communities. We got a company, Enquerro, to sponsor the medical camps in migrant communities. And we went into Bangalore urban and rural, and you had doctors and nurses. We converted a van into a pharmacy. I can tell you, the sky is the limit for imagination. And really, there is no boundary when you decide to impact. Now, what enabled us to do this? I think all the technology we have in front of us, right? Your ability to speak, your ability to connect, all of this has really created, I think in some ways, while the disease has made us physically distanced, technology and the invariable humane nature of every human being on this earth has actually made the world so small that I feel I know so many more people. I can just reach out to so many more people. It's extraordinary. And last, I just want to add one small bit. You know, when a baby is born, the first thing they do is listen. That's why many people talk to them. And then they do this, why? Because they hear the sound faster than their eyes can focus on you and recognize. So, when they say in Tamil, "Then vandu paayudu kaadinile," what they are really saying is what comes through your ears. If it is of honey quality, and Tamil is, it can straight nourish you. It can take you to a different place. So I totally believe that audio podcasts or any other model that might emerge in the long run, I believe will create a more cohesive world, which doesn't make us look at the distances, but makes us look at how we can come together.
Wonderful,
Wow.
Jacintha. Yeah.
That was fantastic, Jacintha.
Yeah.
I did not know this backstory and phenomenal. I love the saying when the pie the kadinile. I'll probably take this. And for those who don't know Tamil, it is basically honey is coming into your ears, literally. So with that, Shiv, do we open up for questions from the audience?
Couple of minutes. Yeah, we have about 5 minutes to wrap up. If we opened it live and then people have been patient, hang on. Yeah. If any other participants wants to ask any other panelists or share something, next couple of minutes we can do that. Ramesh, Parmo.
Hi, Shiv. So I want to thank the team for giving me the opportunity to participate in this podcast. In fact, one big revelation for me was when I shared this with a lot of my friends and a lot of my nephews and nieces, the next generation team. They said, Ramesh, we heard something which we normally wouldn't have heard of it. Right? Okay. Yeah. The way you shared your career experiences and points, what you shared, normally wouldn't have listened to those aspects. And it is a nice opportunity for us to listen to that. Same way, I thought I listened to a lot of podcasts regularly. So that way, it was one way. So it was nice for me to get an opportunity to add to the podcast itself. Okay. So thanks a lot, and all the best to you. As I said, from 100 to 1,000.
Thanks, Ramesh. I think everyone is still recovering from the wonderful story that we heard, all the stories that we heard.
I think we've heard some amazing, astounding stories. This certainly is going to give us a lot more wind beneath our wings, and I'm now all excited and geared up, looking forward to the next 100 or 1,000 or who knows. Because definitely the stories that we've heard and continue and hopefully will continue to hear are eternal and evergreen. So with that, on behalf of my co-hosts Gayatri and Shiv, I want to thank you, Gopal, Jacintha, Sukumar, and Neeraja for being here with us today and to commemorate this special day with us. And we'd also like to give a very special shout out to the following folks. There is Siddharth, who has composed our intro and outro music. Malvika, for all her efforts to consistently and persistently promote the Software People stories, to the Hubhopper team for as our hosting platform, all of our fellow colleagues at PM Power Consulting, y'all are always and constantly been our support. All the guests, you've made this channel a really, really special one. I think the feeling was very mutual, and that's something that came across today. And a loud shout out to our listeners. I mean, y'all are the reason why we create these stories. So thank you so much for listening to us. And if you want your story to be told, so please reach out to us via podcasts@pmpowerconsulting.com. And thank you all once again. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay hopeful, and a big cheers to everyone. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Congratulations again.
Thank you all. Congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Keep
Thank
it
you.
up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and Jessica.
Bye.